Welcome back to Math with Sensei Brian. This is my second video in a series of videos we're going to do on algebra, hopefully to make it easier for you. So in my first video, we did the four functions. Remember, they were addition, right? Subtraction, multiplication, and division. That's supposed to be R. Yeah, we'll get it right. Anyway, those are the four functions that we talked about, and I mentioned we will talk about variables. Well, you say, Sensei, what is a variable? Okay, a variable is usually a letter that represents a number. We can say it like this. Oh, I'll use blue for my variables for right now. Let's say 6 plus OA equals 14. Okay, so we do know for the most part, if we do our math and we're pretty good at addition, 6 plus A is 14. A is more than likely going to equal 8. Well, how do we figure that out? Well, the variable usually represents the unknown quantity. This is where people get stuck. Well, it's nothing to get stuck over because it's easy to find this answer. But to understand, a variable just means a letter that's taking the place of a number. And in mathematics, you always want to find a letter. Usually, the letters you'll see is X, Y, A, B, C, maybe even D at times, right? Get used to seeing those letters, okay? All they represent is unknown quantities of numbers, and that is what it is our job to find those numbers. Okay. All a variable is, once again, is a letter that represents a number. Now, I'm going to teach you how to find those variables, what their value is. Let me get rid of that. How do we find A? How do we solve for A? Well, okay. We do know that this problem, consider it a scale, right? If I was to draw this as a scale, right? Here's my fulcrum, right? Okay. This symbol, the equal sign, means what's on this side is the same as what's on that side. Drop my pen, forgive me. All it means is what's on this side is the same as what's on that side. Real simple. Well, in mathematics, we always want to make things equal. So how do we solve this? Well, remember I just said that what's on one side has to be the same on the other. The thing about math is you always want your final answer, the variable, by itself. So, gee, Sensei, how do we do that? You've heard the term playing with the numbers. Well, I'm about to play with them, and I'm going to show you how you can do it too. We already know that 6 plus 8 equals 14. This is how we find it. Being that all things are equal and that this is a scale, if I want to get this by itself, I have to remove this. Okay? But removing it from here, this side will get a little bit heavier, wouldn't it? So I also have to remove it from here. 6 minus 6 is 0. And 14 minus 8 is 6. It's that simple. Didn't do nothing that much more difficult, did we? Nah. Wasn't that difficult. All we did was remove what we didn't need. Remove this quantity from here as well. Now the scale is the same, right? You took away 6 pounds over here. You took away 6 pounds over there. Now you're left with 8 pounds, if we think of it in terms of a scale, right? Always remember, with this symbol, what's on one side has to equal what's on the other, right? That was an addition problem. Let's do another addition problem. Let's say, let's try this one. A is a common number. Let me do this. I use this one. Let's go B. 15 plus B equals 22, right? Remember our scale, right? What's over here has to be the same as what's over here. In an addition problem, what we want to do is we want to get rid of what we don't need. So to get this by itself, we have to remove what we don't need. We don't need this 15 over here. We also don't need it over here. See you later, alligator. I'm going to break this down slowly. You get rid of this and you put it here and you add 10 here. 12 minus 5 equals 7. Okay? That's basic math. When you subtract, if your number is smaller than the one on the bottom, you borrow 1 from here, as we used to say, and make this less. You actually borrow 10. You're not borrowing 1. So 12 minus 5 equals 7. Okay? That's kind of simple enough. Okay? Well, Sensei, that's good for addition. Well, how does it work in subtraction? Here we go. Let's do this. That's the letter C. Now watch this. There are 2 ways of doing this. 2. Because we're dealing with a subtraction problem, you're going to have to do 2 steps. Remember, 2 steps. Step number 1 is you always want to get the variable by itself. The easiest thing to do is to subtract 27 from each side, which is what I'm going to do first. Now, we know that this is bigger than that, so it's going to be a negative number, right? But here's the kicker. What's wrong with that answer? I'm going to give you 5 seconds. Okay. This is a negative number. This symbol comes down. So negative C equals negative 15. The problem with that is, the rule is, as a final answer, you cannot have a negative variable. So what you now have to do is change the sign. You cannot have a negative variable as a final answer. The answer can be a negative number. But remember, because this is a scale, balance, change the sign here, change the sign here. That's one way of doing it. But if you're a little bit more advanced in math, you know about negative numbers. So I'm going to do this the second way. It takes a little longer, but guess what? You still get to your destination. Now, what I'm going to do is, instead of subtracting 27, I'm going to add C. Which you can do, right? You got rid of this here. So now, see you later, alligator, right? 27 equals 12 plus C, right? Now we can do what we know to do. See ya. And this, my friends, you wind up the same way, right? All you did was you had to take an extra step. It may look a little easier, it may take a little longer, but guess what? In the end, you come up with the exact same answer. And we don't have to take that extra step in changing the signs, because guess what? We did it here, right? We added C over here. We added C. Remember, negative C and positive C equals 0. Okay? Anytime you have a number and you subtract that number from itself, it's 0. Anytime you have a negative number and you add the positive side of it, it equals 0. Remember that. That's important. That's called the additive identity property, or the property of 0. How does this work in multiplication? Remember when I told you, whenever you have a number and a variable next to each other, right, it means multiplication as well. So, let's multiply. Let's go 4 times C, we'll use C again, equals, let's do this, okay? Anytime you got a number and a variable next to each other, nothing between them, it's a multiplication problem. 4 times C equals 40. Well, how do we do this? Remember I tell you that multiplication and division are kind of opposites of each other. In multiplying, you're multiplying groups of numbers to get a bigger number. And in division, you're taking a bigger number and breaking it down into even groups of smaller numbers. Well, that's what we're going to do here. We are going to divide, remember, now, remember when I told you about this symbol here, divisor? Well, that's what I just did, was I turned this into that. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. A rule in mathematics is you do not have to have a 1 in front of a variable. As long as that variable is by itself, consider it times 1. So C equals 1 times C. D equals 1 times D. So you really don't need that. And as we're dividing, well, 40 divided by 4, really, that's my answer. My writing will get better, I promise. I promise. My mother always used to get on me, boy, you can't write. But hopefully you understand what I'm doing. C equals 10. We cancel the 4's. Anytime you divide a number by itself, it equals 1. So you go 137 divided by 137. Guess what? It's going to equal 1. Right? We don't have to have the 1 next to the C. So there's our answer. You just found that variable. Well, you say, okay, Sensei, well, that's good and all, but how does this really work in the real world, man? How does this really work? I'm going to show you how it works. You go to the store with $20. You buy, let's say, oh, well, you're a little older. Let's say you buy a CD. That's what, $15? Or I'm going to do it this way. Right? That's an algebra problem. What's your change? How much change you going to get? Well, you say, duh, Sensei, that's $5. But guess what? That's the algebraic equation. Because in the end, technically, you don't know what it is until you get to the end. Right? You can write it this way. Usually, you could say 20 minus 15 equals B. Well, B equals $5. But as you see, anytime you want to know something, we can also change this up too. We could say, how much did you spend? If you want to know that, let's say 20 minus B equals 7, right? Right? What did we do when we wanted to find this answer? This is an algebraic problem, right? Since we're dealing with money, Money is something we deal with every day, whether we're buying now laters, whether we're buying lemon heads, whether we're buying heads of lettuce, whether we're buying beef ribs, whether we're buying bacon and eggs. You still have to pay with money because people just don't barter like that anymore. So, what did we do? We did this. So 20 equals 7 plus, that's $7 plus B minus 7 minus 7, and again, that's a 0. I'm going to tell you something about life. We as people tend to make things harder than they have to be. This was relatively simple. You went to the store with $20. How much did you spend to get 7? Right? 20 minus B equals 7. Once again, we got rid of this on this side. See you later, alligator. Right? We added it over here to keep that balance. $20 now equals 7 plus B. We got rid of the 7. We got rid of the 7. This variable is now by itself. That's algebra in a nutshell. You've been doing this for quite some time. If you go to the store on your own, back in my day, my parents would say, count your change. Hopefully your parents tell you that too. I mean, you now have cell phones and calculators to do it. We had to do it in our heads, but guess what? You're still doing an algebra problem. This is something you do every single day. As we say, don't make it harder than it has to be. All you did was find the variable. You just found it. It's that simple. As you see, the further on we'll go in math, you're going to find A, you're going to find X, you're going to find all these things, but guess what? In the end, it all comes down to addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Okay? Don't let anyone tell you you can't do this. You can do this. I learned it. You can learn it. You know it. All I'm trying to do is show you that you know it. Okay? Don't feel silly. It's okay. All right? We're people. People make mistakes. This is something that we do constantly. And I don't want you to not get it. Okay? I don't want anyone to rip you off. There's too many people in the world that will. Okay? And adults, if my adults are watching, my parents, my grandparents are watching, hey, it's never too late to learn. In the end, that's what we deal with variables, right? I can go on and on and on, but really, you're going to see the same thing, right? Variables can mean a lot of things, but all they represent is numbers. And in the end, chances are, you're going to look for those numbers, unless they stand alone. You know, you can see this. Well, do we know what that is? No. You know why? Because we don't know what A is and B is. But when you see this, plug those numbers in. Watch this. Or let's even do this. So, when you know what they mean, you can plug those values in and get your answer. It's not that hard. Folks, I hope I went over time. I went a little bit longer than I wanted to on this one, but I wanted you to understand that this is not something you can't get. This is not something you can't do. You can do this. And you'll hear me say every time, be kind to one another, love one another. Because in the end, that's all we have. Trust. God bless you, and I'll see you on my next video. If you like what you saw, please hit the thumbs up. Please hit the subscribe button. Okay? Lets me know that at least somebody cares enough to watch this, and somebody wants to learn. That encourages me to keep going. God bless you. Have a good day.